I want to thank Affinity for sponsoring the soundtrack series, Nora at the Library, and especially Maria for being here tonight. I'm really excited for her to delve into the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. And please, she's going to be presenting in sections, so hold your applause till the end of her story. Without further ado, please welcome Maria LoBiondo.
Thank you. How's the sound? We good? Okay. So those Greek and Roman gods, Zeus in the Greek, Jupiter in the Roman, turning himself into a bull or a swan to chase beautiful ladies, or Neptune in the Roman, Poseidon in the Greek, who might send a nice breeze for the ships to sail or a storm to sink them. Then there's Hades, the god of the underworld, or Dionysus, the god of wine and pleasure. What's not to love about all these gods? Oh, let's not forget the goddesses. Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, and her daughter Persephone. Oh, so many great stories. And in those stories, sometimes there are mysterious journeys to faraway places. And of course, love stories. I'm guessing that a lot of you are familiar with the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. Do I see some nodding heads? Yes, yes. I thought I was too, until I was asked to give this presentation. The composer, Dobrinka Tabakova, who composed the beautiful piece, Orpheus Comet, which I hope you will hear at one of the Symphony Orchestra concerts, used as her inspiration the Roman poet Virgil's version, the skeleton that he wrote of the myth. Now, this myth has been around since 500 BC in the Greek. And they mentioned it, but they never wrote the story down. It wasn't until Virgil in 6 BC that the storyline was written down. And Virgil introduces a character I had never heard of, Aristaeus the beekeeper. So, she says this is Tabakova, she says that she was inspired by Virgil's version and the bees. So I thought, oh, I've got to do something with bees. I started doing research. This myth has been reimagined over and over and over again. It's been painted. Titian and Rubens did paintings of it. It's been in plays. Tennessee Williams did Orpheus Descending. And more recently, Sarah Rule did Eurydice, a version from Eurydice's point of view. There have been poets inspired. Rilke wrote Orpheus, Sonnets to Orpheus. And H.D., Hilda Doolittle, did a version with Eurydice as the main character. And of course, more recently, if you're into musicals, on Broadway was Hadestown, which is a reimagining of this myth. And of course, opera. Scholars say that the first opera to carry a narrative was Monteverdi's L'Orfeo. And the composer Tabakova wove in inspiration from L'Orfeo in her piece as well. So somehow I had to weave all this together. So here's what I propose. I propose that I will do this in sections, as Katie said, introduce you to the main characters, speaking in their voice, Aristaeus, Eurydice, and Orpheus. Then after the shortest of pauses, I will become the narrator, and tell you what happened when all these characters interacted together. And together, we will explore why this myth over the centuries has been told again and again and again, why it plucks at our heartstrings, and hopefully it will pluck at ours tonight. You ready?
Yeah.
Good. Here we go. I am Aristeus. My father, Apollo, gave me the skills of husbandry and caring for the bees. I love the bees. I love to watch them. I love to watch them float over the meadow and go to a flower and dance around the petals of the flower and then dance further in the throat of the flower and get themselves covered in pollen. And then they fly back, and sometimes I follow them to their hives. And at the end of the season, I go and I reach for that dear, sweet, sticky, delicious substance, honey. I love the bees more than anything, more than watching my sheep, more than taking care of the vines. I could watch the bees every day. I am outside most of the time, and so I'm rather coarse looking and my hands are rough from the work that I do, and I don't mind keeping to myself. I'm not one for small talk. I prefer to be out in the meadow by myself. That was until one day, when I noticed out of the corner of my eye a group of nymphs coming out of the woodlands, floating along to my meadow, and one of them was very beautiful. She had long, dark hair floating down her back, and I heard her laugh, and her laugh sounded so sweet, like honey. And the nymphs, they sat in the meadow where the flowers were deepest, the daisies and the poppies, and I did not begrudge them taking the flowers from my bees. I sat and watched them, and I heard one of the nymphs call out her name, Eurydice. Oh, that sounded sweet to me as well. I kept watching her. I kept hoping that she would turn around and look at me and then maybe come over and talk to me, because I was afraid to go and talk to her. But she didn't. And then when the day is done and their flower crowns were made, they floated away. I hoped she would come back. And she did. She did, with her sisters. And again, they made the flower crowns, and I watched her, but she didn't turn around. Then I had the idea. At the end of the season, I would bring her one of my honeycombs. And then I could make conversation with her, and she would know how I found her so beautiful. But I never got the chance, because I heard that she was going to wed my half-brother, Orpheus. He is as different from me as night from day. He of the golden throat and the golden voice, while I am rough. At first I was sad, and then a rage grew in me, because I thought, I too have Apollo for a father. Why shouldn't I have Eurydice? I deserved her as well. And that rage grew. And I determined that I would have Eurydice. I would have her. Eurydice. I love floating with my sister nymphs. Oh, we go through the woodlands and the meadows and laugh together. We spend our days in the beautiful sunlight. And one of our favorite things to do is to make flower crowns. And when we do, we sit and talk as young women do. And mostly what we talk about is love. We talk about our dreams of finding a partner who will appreciate us, but also who will protect us and who will be perfect in every way. How we'll live with them and how our lives will be so wonderful. We enjoyed these conversations. One day, we came through the woodlands and found a meadow. It was full of beautiful flowers, daisies and poppies. Oh, so many poppies. And we couldn't resist. We sat ourselves down and began to weave the stems to make flower crowns. And of course, we talked about how someday we would have these wonderful partners. We'd be filled with love. While we were doing this, I had the strangest sensation of someone staring at me. You know what that's like when someone's looking at you and you kind of feel it. I didn't want to turn around. But finally, I was too curious. I maneuvered myself to look. And I saw a man sitting on a rock. He was rough looking. No way would I ever want him for a partner. So I did not turn around again. But then I thought, well, how silly of me. He's not just looking at me. He's looking at all of us. And why wouldn't he? We're beautiful and we're having fun and he's sitting off by himself. So I didn't think anything else about it. And we went back to that meadow because it was so beautiful and made more flower crowns, and again, I felt him staring at me. I didn't like it. It was uncomfortable. And I wouldn't turn around to look at him. So we did not go back to that place. But another day, when we were floating through the woodlands, we heard music so beautiful. A voice singing so beautiful. We had to go and see who it was. And we came out into a meadow, and there was the handsomest man, curly locks, holding a lyre and singing to the heavens. It was so enchanting. We were beguiled. We had to go closer. It was as if we were hypnotized. And we floated and we sat at his feet. And I sat the closest. And I looked up at him. Oh, I couldn't get enough. He was beautiful. His singing was beautiful. His music was beautiful. We stayed there all day. And when the sun, Apollo's chariot, began to head to the horizon, we had to leave, and we went one way and he went the other. But I knew I had to find him again. So we went back to that meadow, and he was there. And again, I sat right at his feet and looked up at him. That time, he asked my name. Eurydice, I said. Oh, he said, that sounds like music. Oh. I learned his name as well, Orpheus. And I kept going back. My sisters finally decided they had had enough, but I had not. I kept going back and sitting at his feet and looking up at him, and I drank in all that music and all that song. And then one day, he looked down at me and he said, I think we should be wed. What do you think? I couldn't speak. I merely nodded my head, and he burst out laughing. And, well, after that, we began to talk more together and tell about our dreams and tell about ourselves to each other. And we began to plan a wedding ritual. And I confided in him about that strange man who had been staring at me and how it made me uncomfortable. He said, why wouldn't he stare at you? You're so beautiful. Well, we kept planning for our wedding, and I thought everything was going to be perfect. But the fates had other plans. Cruel, cruel plans. Orpheus. My father, Apollo, gave me the skill to make beautiful music. He gave me this lyre. And my mother, Calliope, gave me the skill with words to make tales, songs, poetry. I sang all day. I loved to sing. I sang for people at the temple. I sang for parties and feasts. I sang for people wherever I could. I liked they admired me. But sometimes I needed to go off by myself to compose new songs. And that is how I found myself in a meadow one day, singing, when from the woodlands came a group of nymphs, and they floated nearer and sat at my feet. One especially. Oh, she was beautiful. She looked up at me with big, dark, honey-colored eyes, full, and she looked like she adored me. I'll admit I like that. I sang all day, and then when the day was at it was done, they went one way and I went the other, and I realized I hadn't asked her name. I hoped she'd come back. And she did. That time I didn't forget. And she told me her name was Eurydice. That sounded like music to me. She sat there watching me like no one had ever done before. I loved singing to her. And eventually, her sisters didn't come. She came alone. And that was fine with me. She sat looking at me, and I sang and sang and sang to the heavens. And then I realized she was my muse. She inspired me. We belonged together. So the next time I saw her, I said, I think we should be wed. What do you think? Her eyes got so wide, she couldn't say a word. She just nodded her head. And I burst out laughing. After that, we began to talk more. And we shared our dreams, our hopes, how we thought our lives would intertwine. Oh, we imagined so many wonderful things. She confided in me about one who had been staring at her. I said, why wouldn't he stare at you? You're so beautiful. Well, we decided to plan a wedding ritual. And we wanted to invite everyone that we knew. Everyone. We asked them to send the word out to tell everyone to come to our ritual. I had figured out by then that the one staring at Eurydice was my half-brother, Aristaeus. I hoped that he would bring a honeycomb as a wedding gift to us. I didn't go to ask him personally to come to the wedding. I imagined that others would tell him about it. But that was my mistake. My big mistake. The wedding and the aftermath. It was a glorious day, the day of the wedding for Orpheus and Eurydice. Oh, the sky was clear, so clear, it was as if Apollo was pouring down blessings on them. They had decided not to be married in front of the temple or in the common areas, but to be married in the meadow where they had spent so much time together. And all their friends, everyone who knew them, were there in a great half circle around them. Everyone but Aristaeus. Aristaeus stayed off, hidden. He could see everything, but he did not come nearer. But Orpheus and Eurydice, they didn't know. They didn't mind. Their eyes were only for each other. Only for each other. After the wedding was performed, and before the great feast that would follow, Orpheus and Eurydice decided to go for a walk by the river. Orpheus held his lyre, and He took Eurydice's hand, and they went to the river. There was a path there. And between the path and the river, there were high grasses. And they walked along together. They didn't really speak. Their hearts were so filled with joy. They walked along. And then Aristaeus came running and pushed Orpheus to the ground, where he hit his head and was knocked out. And Eurydice looked up. Seeing Aristaeus, she turned and she began to run. She ran as fast as she could possibly run. But Aristaeus was fast and strong as well. And he grabbed her and he threw her down to the ground. She was nimble. She was able to wriggle away. And she got up and she kept running, hot tears scalding her cheeks. She ran blindly with those tears. She ran. She did not see the viper that was crossing the path. Her foot stamped on it, and the viper reared up and plunged its fangs into her ankle. And then when she stepped back, the viper slithered away. Aristaeus behind her saw everything. He did not help her. He slithered away as well. Eurydice stood there, knowing what those fang marks meant. She looked up at the sky, wanting to bring all that life into her if she could. But of course, the poison was beginning to course through her body. She tried so hard to stay upright. She began thinking of all the things that she would miss. I'll never sleep in Orpheus's arms. I'll never hear his music again. I'll never wake up next to him. And what if we had had a child? All of that, all of our dreams, gone. She sank to the ground and lay there in the grasses, looking up at the sky for as long as she could, trying to smell the vegetation, trying to keep life as long as she could, but she had to close her eyes and grew paler, and her breathing began to slow. Meanwhile, Orpheus came to with a throbbing head, and he picked up his lyre and he looked around, and not seeing Eurydice, he began to run along the path to find her, calling, "Eurydice! Eurydice!" He had to go quite far before he found her laying in the grass, muddied, and he looked and saw the 2 fang marks and the blood trickling from them, and understood what had happened. He went to his knees. He lifted up her head. "Oh, Eurydice, don't leave me. You are my muse. I cannot live without you. Don't leave me." But of course, that was impossible. He cried out and he tried to revive her, but finally, with her pale body, he lifted her up and began to walk with her body to where they had hoped to call their home. And all that time, Aristaeus, from a hiding place, watched everything. After that, Orpheus was inconsolable. He barely ate. All he could do was sing out his pain and his grief. He cried to the heavens again and again. At this, he couldn't stand living without Eurydice. Who knows how long he cried out like that. Some say 7 months, but we don't know. And then was it Apollo putting a thought in his mind? Or was it Orpheus himself deciding, well, if my music is said to make the trees bend closer to hear, and the flowers turn from the sun to listen to me, if my music is said that the wild animals, the hare, the deer, even the wild boar, freeze in their places just to listen to me, and the birds stop their singing to hear my singing, if that is true, then why wouldn't the rulers of the underworld grant me Eurydice again? Why can't my music help bring her back? And with new motivation, he took his lyre and he began to travel to one of the places where it was said was an opening to the underworld. It was by the sea, an opening in the rocks like a great throat that went down deeper and deeper and deeper until there was no light at all. And Orpheus went there with his lyre to try to win Eurydice back. He held on as he went down those rocks. At first they were rough and he could keep his footing, but then they became mossy and slippery. And as he kept going deeper, a putrid, rotting smell assaulted his nose. For what could ever grow where there was only dark? Deeper and deeper and deeper he went until the light of our world totally faded away. But he did not give up. He kept going until he came to what seemed like solid ground. And he heard the rushing of the river Styx, the border river between our world and the underworld. Charon, the ferryman who brought souls over to the underworld, saw a flicker of movement and began to come across the Styx. But when he came close enough, he said, "You don't belong here. You're alive." And Orpheus began to play and sing. And Charon, hearing that beautiful music, relaxed, helped Orpheus into the boat, and ferried him across. Helped him out of the boat again, so Orpheus could make his way to the thrones of Hades, the king, and Persephone, his queen. As Orpheus walked, he could feel the spirits of those long dead who had been in the underworld for who knows how long. They had come to hear him. They accompanied him. And finally, he came to that three-headed monster dog, Cerberus, who guarded the thrones of the rulers of the underworld. And Cerberus reared his great heads as if to gnash Orpheus. But Orpheus played his lyre and sang. And Cerberus relaxed and put his 3 heads slowly down on his paws like a puppy. And Orpheus kept walking, for there he was now, before the thrones of Hades, the king of the underworld, and Persephone, his queen. And he sang to them. He begged them, Let me bring Eurydice back. She was taken too young. She was taken too soon. We will come back. We will come back together happily when our days are done. Please, let me bring her back. And then he turned to Persephone and spoke to her, singing, "You know what it's like to be wrenched away too soon, to be taken from one who loves you. You know what that is like." And of course she did. For Hades had grabbed her from the upper world, wrenched her away from her mother Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, and brought her to the underworld. And though Persephone had made her peace with being queen there, spending 6 months in the underworld, she could go back for 6 months in the spring and summer to our world. And she knew the pain that Orpheus felt. She turned to look at Hades. He knew that look. And so he nodded his head. And the two of them said yes. Orpheus could bring Eurydice back on one condition. And the condition was this: he could not turn around. He could not look back until they were both in the upper world. This seemed an easy condition to Orpheus. And so he thanked them, began to make his way out, playing so Cerberus would keep sleeping. Back to Charon, who took him across the Styx. And then the long climb up those rocks to the upper world, past the place where it smelled rotten, past the mossy rocks, up, and he could see the light. He could see that they were almost there. And while he was climbing, he had a thought. Had they tricked him? He could not sense Eurydice behind him. Had those gods tricked him and she wasn't there? They were almost to the upper world. It was certainly safe enough now to turn around. So he did. And when he did, "Oh, Orpheus, what have you done? What madness is this? Oh, even now I feel them pulling me back. Oh, farewell." And he watched as she disappeared like smoke. What could he do but keep on climbing? And when he reached the top, oh, the regret, the grief, worse than the first time. And he knew there was no going back, no second chance. Hades' heart is stone. It does not hear human prayers. There was no going back. And so it is said that he sang again, only so much more bitterly this time. Sang and sang and sang to the heavens his grief at having lost Eurydice yet again. He sang and sang, and because he had, before meeting Eurydice, worshipped the god Dionysus, the god of wine and pleasure, Dionysus was moved and wanted to comfort him and sent his handmaids to comfort Orpheus. But Orpheus wanted nothing of them. He rejected them and sent them away one by one until those handmaids became so enraged that they, in a frenzy, in a fury, went to Orpheus and pulled him apart, limb from limb, casting his body parts this way and that, and they took his head and flung it into a nearby river, where it floated away, calling out, Eurydice, Eurydice. That is not the end. Aren't you wondering what happened to that half-brother who caused all this chaos? Aristeus. Aristeus, who had seen what happened to Eurydice, who had watched Orpheus carry her off, who had heard Eurydice's sister nymphs call out in thunder to the mountains when they realized she was dead. He went back to his place and shunned all human contact, preferring to stay with his sheep and his bees. But one day he went to check on his bees, and they were all dead. All of them. Was it sickness? Was it starvation? What had killed them all off? He didn't know. What could he do? He did the first thing he thought of. He went to his mother. His mother, Cyrene, who lived beneath the waters. And he called out to her. And Cyrene came up and he accused her of punishing him for what he did not know. But she said no. No, she had not punished him. She had no idea why his bees were dead. But she had an idea of how he could learn what had happened. You must go to the seer Proteus. Proteus knows what has been, what is now, and what will be. He lives by the waters. He is a laborer for Neptune. He watches the creatures of the sea for Neptune, but then goes back to his human shape and sleeps in a cave, and I know where that cave is. I can bring you to him, but you must know this. Proteus is a shapeshifter, and he will not give up his secrets easily. You must hold him tight, and he will change into a lion, a tiger, a wild boar, a serpent, fire, I don't know. But you must not let go, because until he goes back to his human form, he will not tell you why the bees are dead. And so Aristeus and Cyrene went to that place where Proteus slept. And they waited for him to come back from his labors with Neptune, the god of the sea, and go into his cave and fall asleep. Only then did Aristeus tiptoe into the cave and grab Proteus and hold him as tightly as he could. And Proteus let out a roar like a lion, but Aristeus did not let go. And then Proteus turned into a wild boar with tusks threatening to go into Aristeus's neck. But Proteus hung on, and so did Aristeus. And then Proteus turned himself into a great serpent and began to squeeze Aristeus. And the two of them squeezed and squeezed and squeezed until finally Proteus went back to his human form. What do you want? I want to know what happened to my bees. Just punishment for what you have done. You are cursed by Orpheus and by Eurydice's sisters, who saw everything you did. They have killed your bees. Yes, you thought you got away scot-free? No, no, no. You are cursed, and your bees are gone. And now Aristaeus knew why his bees were gone and went back and told Cyrene everything. My son, you must beg forgiveness. You must build an altar. And before that altar, bring 4 perfect bulls and 4 perfect heifers whose shoulders have never felt a yoke, and slay them one by one in front of the altar and let their blood spill and allow their bodies to stay there rotting for 9 days. And then, on the 9th day, bring a bouquet of those dark purple poppies to place on the altar, and bring a black ewe sheep and slay it in front of the altar. More offerings for Orpheus and Eurydice. And then you must wait and see if your sacrifice is accepted. Well, Aristaeus built that altar, and he searched for those perfect bulls and heifers, and he brought them one by one before the altar and slit their throats and allowed the blood to run down and left them there for the 9 days. And on the 9th day he went back, their rotting bodies in the sun lying there. He brought the bouquet of dark purpley black poppies and placed it on the altar. He brought the black ewe sheep and slayed it and left it in front of the altar. And then he stepped back and he waited. And he heard a buzzing. It got louder, a humming. And he saw the bellies of those bulls begin to throb. And from those rotting bellies came swarms and swarms of bees going in every direction. And Apollo, seeing that the sacrifice had been accepted, and knowing that Orpheus and Eurydice had been reunited again in the underworld, reached down for the lyre that Orpheus had left and flung it like a comet into the sky, where it is still. The constellation Lyra is Orpheus's lyre, there for us to see, even now, to remind us of this story. Did we want to do Q&A? If anyone wants to ask a question, I can try to answer. No guarantees.
I have a question. Sure. Did you memorize something, or does that just come?
Well, as I was saying to a friend here, Jack, the oral tradition we do not memorize. We know the threads of the story, but we tell it as it kind of comes to us so that it's fresh for us, just like it's fresh for you. I am experiencing the story as I'm telling it to you. I'm smelling those putrid bulls. I'm climbing down to the underworld, and I'm seeing the lyre fly into the sky with you. That's the wonder of the oral tradition. Yeah, that's it.
Could you tell us a little bit about the sources for your story?
Yes. So when I listened to Orpheus Comet, which is a beautiful piece, and Katie was kind enough to send me what the composer herself, she wrote a little piece on her inspiration. It was clear to me that the bees were really important, so I had to do something with bees. And she ends it with the fanfare from Monteverdi's L'Orfeo. Monteverdi's L'Orfeo was written for a wedding, and so it could not be sad. It had to be happy. So it has this happy music at the end. So I knew that, this wasn't going to be a total downer. that I had to somehow weave that, and I read several translations of the Georgics. That's the poem that Virgil wrote that is about agriculture. And the fourth book is all about Aristeas. There's like this much about Orpheus and Eurydice. It's all about Aristeas and his bees. And the last part is this making of the altars because the bees have been decimated and how he gets them back.
And where is the setting of this? Is it southern Bulgaria, northern Greece?
Thrace, which is, yes, Thrace is
So
where...
we could kind of go back and reenact it. Not
Oh, sure. Yeah, right. But Thrace is a very big region.
Right. Right.
So the opening to the underworld is by the sea, supposedly. It's some peninsula. I didn't want to get into all the names. It's hard enough to say Persephone.
Have you been there?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
I was on the wrong side of the mountains.
Oh.
It was,
Yeah.
What was your process, Marie, in developing this? Where were you at the beginning of putting this story
The
together?
beginning was shock. Because Katie asked me, and I thought, oh, sure, I know that myth. And then I read Virgil's version, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? And my original thought was to do different points of view, Rashomon-like, And I thought I would tell the story 3 different ways. But then that didn't feel right. And yet, because Aristeas was a character that I did not know, and I was pretty sure very few others did, I decided that the characters had to be introduced. Also, for us to feel emotion for them, right? And why this story still keeps being retold and resonating. So I had to imagine what each character was like, and then begin to, learn the plot lines of the myth itself as Virgil presents it. He doesn't present Apollo's with the lyre, but it's Orpheus Comet, so I had to get a comet in there somehow.
And at what point did you decide on your props?
I've decided on them as I was developing the characters, because I wanted to distinguish each one without, just standing here and saying, I am Aristeas.
A last question on staging. Your decision to remain fixed in one spot as opposed to moving at any point. What thought did you give to that?
This is how I tell. I use my hands a lot and my facial expression, but I'm not one of these tellers who wanders very much.
Good decision. I like it enormously. Bravo.
Yes.
What do you, in your opinion, what do you think makes this story so touching?
In my opinion,
Yes.
this story is touching because of the fallibility of the characters, how the characters interact, and all of us have had, loss in some form, and losing your first love is tragic. You think it's the end of the world, and I think that in that way, the story touches us. And grief, none of us get out of this journey of life without a little grief. And I think that that also touches our hearts. And so, that in developing the characters, I was thinking about different things in my life on those themes, and memory, right? Memory is such a precious thing. And so I think that that's the power of the myths. They say the myths are not a story that just stays. The myths happen again and again and again because we live them. They're lived experience.
And how did you know the song? Like, was it written in the story, or like?
Virgil's version is written in the Georgics. It's the skeleton of the myth itself, and it's Proteus who tells Aristeus the story. You are being cursed by Orpheus because, Orpheus went down to the underworld, he tried to get her back, he couldn't get her back, He tells the story, but I didn't feel like it belonged there for our purposes, so I moved it. Yeah.
I loved it. And I found it so charming. So charming. You said you wanted to make it human, so go down to Hades with Persephone, and okay, gave up, and okay, let it go. She was so thrilled, so in love with him, and so thrilled, and so touched when he said, I think we should be wed. All of these little decisions that you made to tell the story achieve the humanization of the characters and make it not only interesting, but charming and warm and humane and human.
Thank you. And that's the point, is to make it something that touches us again and again, right? It's more than words on a page. Thank you. Yes?
So, Orpheus had his muse, was Eurydice, right?
Yes.
Do you have your muse?
What an interesting question.
Yeah, because any of us, we are inspired by something, right? What's your inspiration?
So, I'm going to have to talk around that because I love the stories. I can't, like Orpheus, I can't get enough of the stories. All kinds of these, what I call the old stories, the folk tales and the wonder tales and the myths and the legends that have been told for generations. I feel that they hold human wisdom in them that we can just hear again and again, and it can touch us in a way that's not with just our minds, it's in our hearts. It goes like Cupid's arrow, right to the heart. And that is kind of my inspiration for wanting to tell these tales again and again.
What is in your repertoire?
A lot of multicultural tales and a couple of literary tales, but mostly folk tales and wonder tales. Yeah. And Scheherazade, as some of you know, I was fortunate enough to do that with the invitation of the Princeton Symphony Orchestra about 5 years ago. Yeah.
Did the composer change the story in her own way or have a different emphasis for her? It's her music?
Her music. I don't know. I know that when I listen to it, the bees, you hear the bees, you hear them, it's really, really strong on the
And
bees.
is it like an opera? So when
No, it's a very short piece. It's about 5 minutes long. It's very beautiful.
Okay.
And then it ends with the fanfare from Monteverdi's L'Orfeo. And so it ends triumphantly. That was another thing. It ends happy. Because I didn't want to be, I thought, oh, what a downer. And everybody, oh, God.
We mentioned
I know Maria. She's going to be at Morgan, along with a couple of others of us tomorrow night, so get her there. But how the myths travel through different cultures. And, this is a Greek, it went to Roman, but the whole second chance is in hell, and you can't look back, like Lot looking back, his wife turns to pillar of salt, and there's so many ways when you do a myth like this, it just opens up so many other cultural things.
And you see in the folk tales how the myths have filtered down. The story of Aristeus holding on to Proteus, you'll find that in the Scottish folk tale Tam Lin. That's what she has to do. She has to hold on, and he changes shape, and she can't let go until he goes back into his real shape. The first story I ever learned was East of the Sun and West of the Moon, which is the Scandinavian story of a young woman who goes off with a great white bear. But it's actually the myth of Cupid and Psyche redone in the folktale. And it wasn't, I didn't realize it when I chose it to learn it, but then afterwards I thought, oh, this is why I love this. Because that had always been one of my favorite myths. Yeah, they play in again and again and again.
Janice and I saw a film, and I couldn't stop thinking of it, Orpheus, which was 20,000 Species of Bees. Set in
Right, yeah.
And there were, I don't know how it was just bringing your story,
Sure.
of course, this myth to that film.
Well, and
similarities that I.
yes, I mean, that's another example of how the myths kind of filter down into many different reimaginings. And bees were said in the ancient times to be spirit figures, so that's another layer, right? The symbolism in the myths and in different stories, a bee is not just a bee. A bee can be the soul of someone, the spirit, messenger. Yeah. Yes.
Were you drawing on anything special for Orpheus and Eurydice?
My kalimba playing is, random. I am not a musician, but I did want to bring some music, and I actually Googled the sound of a lyre, and was there an instrument that kind of mimicked that sound, and kalimba came up, and I thought, oh, I can do that.
I'm a musician, so you can't ask me any questions.
All right, everyone, thank you so much. Please give Maria another